child, the first presidential debate of the 2020 election happened last night, and I gotta say, Chris Wallace, you know, you held your own because you couldn't get down in the dirt with them. You couldn't yell at them. You couldn't shut off the mic. So you basically couldn't do what I understand. I know how you felt, because sometimes you just want to go, you know what? Shut up. You can't do it. You got to try to find the way to get it all out and do it in a good way, be calm, and it was amazing. And you take a look at what he was dealing with here. You think we're rough on the View. Check this out.
Everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
God.
Why would you answer that
because
question?
The question is, the question
Supreme
is,
Court Justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen,
gentlemen. I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to be, why should I be different than the two of you?
I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3.5 million.
And by the way, my son...
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it. And why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it felt a little bit familiar when everybody's trying to make their point. I think it was extraordinary to see. And so let's have this open discussion and see what everybody's takeaway was. Anna, why don't you start? What was your takeaway?
I think they should have you moderate the debate, dressed as a nun, holding a ruler in your hand and just striking it back and forth.
On HBO.
Listen, it was awful. It was awful. It was pathetic. It was embarrassing. It was painful to watch. And if you didn't already believe before watching that debate that Trump lacks the basic qualifications and character to be president, then surely you believed it after watching that debate. He showed no restraint. He showed no respect. And it really ticks me off because this is such a pillar of democracy. And so many Americans tuned in wanting to hear policies and a real civil debate and ideas and a plan for how we're going to get out of this crisis. And instead, what they saw was a petulant schoolyard bully interrupting and screaming and spewing misinformation. And it was disrespectful to the American voters. Shame on him. Shame on those who enable him and defend this behavior. And I do think it swayed that very small sliver of undecided voters. I was reading yesterday, Frank Luntz, who does focus groups, did a focus group of independent undecided voters, and the words they used to describe Trump, and I'm quoting, arrogant, crackhead, and un-American. And yes, I want to apologize to the crackheads.
Joy, how would you have handled this? Joy, how would you have done this, Joy?
That was fun. Well, I started drinking early last night because I knew what was coming. But, it's interesting. He had Rudy Giuliani was coaching him, and Chris Wallace was the moderator. Should have been the other way around. I mean, Rudy Giuliani could trigger Deepak Chopra. You don't need somebody like that in your ear when you're a rageaholic in the first place. But you say a nun and Whoopi, I say Tony Soprano as the moderator. Every time he interrupts, you tase him. And the other thing I wanted to say was, Whoopi, I can relate to what you're saying about being in that position because I was a school teacher, and when my kids would act up the way Donald Trump acted up last night, I would call the parents. But in this case, we'd have to call the Long Island medium to have a seance, so it wouldn't even work. So in summation, I think that I felt very bad for Chris Wallace, but the ball is in America's court now. Are we going to vote for the toddler or the parent? That's what it comes down to, America. That's it.
Right. Sarah, what was your takeaway?
I don't think there were any real takeaways. I had very low expectations for last night, and I thought it would be mainly an exercise in style. And little did I know my bar that I had set so low could go even lower. But there was a tweet at one point that said that they should have put a mom stuck in her home during the pandemic as rather than Chris Wallace, because she may have handled it. But I kind of echo what you said. Chris Wallace had an impossible job. Expecting him to be able to handle what came at him last night is like expecting parents to be able to teach their kids in this pandemic. Like, that was not a job he was signing up for. There was too much to keep track of. Right. From the lies to the anger and the behavior, it was out of control. But the part, just to button this up real quickly, that makes me sad is, like Anna said, people tuned in to get real information, and that's what you hope for as citizens of this country, that we inform ourselves. And there was a zero takeaway, and I hope that doesn't hurt the enthusiasm as people turn up at the polls, because I guarantee people aren't going to watch the next two that come down the pipes. There are going to be people that were turned away by this whole experience.